Secretary Carter, you talked about our 9 lines of effort. Not all of those are military lines of effort. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now that General Allen has departed as our envoy in charge of those 9 lines of effort, who are minding those non-defense lines of effort?
Well, it's a good question, and one of the things that I have proposed, and Secretary Kerry has accepted, that he and I meet periodically with the other agency heads who have the other lines of effort. General Allen's been present at those meetings. His successor, Ambassador McGurk, will be present at them. And I thought, what's one of the things I noticed when I began to look at this campaign, that since all of these lines of effort it is necessary to have moving in concert, we needed a better effort to do that. So Secretary Kerry's agreed to do that with me. We've had, I think, 4 meetings. General Dunford was at the last one, focused on counter financing was the last one. Before that was foreign fighter flow, both into the conflict region and out of the conflict region to Europe, around the world. We are addressing messaging and ISIL's messages and efforts to recruit people online. So there are lots of different dimensions to this that are not military per se, but I believe that there are opportunities to make the whole greater than the sum of the parts, and I've sought to seize those opportunities with Secretary Kerry, now with General Dunford, and make sure that all these different efforts are coordinated. They're all important, and the other participants are doing important things, the diplomatic people and the intelligence people and the Homeland Security and law enforcement folks, but I think the whole can be greater than the sum of the parts, and just per your question, that's exactly the intent.
Is that a detailed way of saying there's not a single person taking over all of the non-defense lines of effort?
There has not been a single person who had that responsibility. Remember, General Allen, who was superb, General Allen had the responsibility for assembling the coalition, which he did with great skill, and to his credit and Ambassador McGurk's, we have a broad coalition. I'm talking about something different, which is assembling the mechanics of all of the 9 lines of effort. And so that's something I'm undertaking to do with Secretary Kerry, and we're gathering in the other parties that are involved, and Ambassador McGurk will be part of that effort. But I think it's necessary.
Okay. I'd like to
organizational change.
I'd like to shift briefly now to Russia's move into Syria. A few weeks ago, before the major Russian movement into Syria, the United States government requested that Bulgaria and Iraq close its airspace to Russian aircraft. How did we transmit that request to Iraq?
I do not know what the mechanics of that were. Can I get back to you on that, Senator? I simply don't know.
Is that something the State Department would typically do, the Department of Defense, the White House?
Joe, go ahead.
Senator, I believe that message would have been delivered by Ambassador Jones in Baghdad.
And Iraq obviously declined our request while Bulgaria accepted it.
Declined a request.
And let Russian aircraft fly through their airspace.
There has been Russian aircraft that's flown through Iraqi airspace. My understanding is it was not at the invitation of the Iraqi government.
Does the Iraq Air Force have the capability to protect its own air force and exclude a foreign air force like Russia's?
They have limited capability, Senator. They recently were fielded with F-16s, but they have limited air-to-air capability.
So if the United States government requested that the government of Iraq close its airspace to Russia, surely the United States government was prepared to assist Iraq in closing its airspace and stopping Russian aircraft from flying over Iraq?
Well, it's a sovereign decision by Iraq, but I'll tell you, we're not uninterested in it. But you're raising a very important question, which is Iraq going to cooperate with the Russian, what I would regard as I've called it wrong-headed approach in Syria. We have received, and I believe that General Dunford received just last week from Prime Minister Abadi in no uncertain terms, the statement that he will not work with the Russians. He will not allow them to be partners with Iraq in that regard, that we are the preferred partners of Iraq. We've been insistent on that point, and Prime Minister Abadi has repeated those pledges to us. I only say that because we feel emphatically about that, receiving those pledges, and intend to have them implemented by Prime Minister Abadi, but he has not been ambiguous about that. And I believe the most recent conversation was held by General Dunford, and perhaps you'd like to say something about that. Just a serious issue.
No, Senator, I raised it both with the Minister of Defense and the Prime Minister, and again, tried to explain to them that our continued support really would be problematic were they to invite the Russians in to conduct strikes. I was assured that they had not extended that invitation, and they did not intend to extend an invitation to do that.
Well, in closing, I would say it's problematic for Russia to be resupplying its forces in Syria by flying through Iraq. We should renew our request that they exclude Russian aircraft from their airspace, and our military should be prepared to assist them in excluding Russian aircraft from their airspace. Thank you, Senator Inhofe. Chairman.